Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I'm Ravi, Lulla. DB should be joining me shortly. And we've got, of course, the main man, Shane Schillerberg, over here making sure everything gets rocking and rolling. Shane, how are you this morning?
Oh, come on, Shane.
We're doing all right? Doing
Why
okay?
the heck is Shane walking in there?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Doing good? You have a good weekend?
Yeah, I had a great weekend. It was good. So.
You know, it's one of the last slow-ish weekends before college football gets kicked off. We have a game this week. We have a real game. It's a real college football game. It's on Saturday. It's a real thing that's happening, Shane. We're finally here.
You know, and you had mentioned that last week, and I had thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I can't wait for football to start.
Oh, it's outstanding. I kind of wish they had more than one game on week 0. Like, give me a couple of them, right? Like, it feels like a little bit of a tease just to throw the one out there. But we're here. We made it. We have college football this week. It's exciting. Just like Doc says. It's exciting. We've got a good show for you here today.
It's exciting.
As we do get ramped up into college football mode this week and next. We've got our, of course, Monday regular Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. At 8:45, we're going to talk a little NFL football with Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports. And at 9:45, we will continue our preview of Nebraska's opponents. We are on to Illinois, where we will talk to Robert Rosenthal. He's the publisher of the IlliniBoard.com. Always enjoy talking to Robert. And I will say, last year, Robert gave us a terrific inside scoop on Illinois, because I think people were outside of Champaign were maybe a little bit more optimistic about Brett Bielema and how things were going to go this year. He was like, hey, guys, just listen to me. Illinois is never good 2 years in a row, so don't bet on it. And I was like, do you have a reason other than just fan paranoia? He said, nope, not at all. They're just not good 2 years in a row. And I was like, all right, we're going to mark you down. And then he was right on that one. He got us on that one. So we'll see what his thoughts are this year. He's super well informed. We love talking to Robert. Been talking to him for a few years now, previewing Illinois, and got actually hooked up with Robert from my buddy Evan that I've talked about on here a little bit. So they know each other, and you know, they're, I think, the only two people in the state of Illinois that like Illinois football more than Illinois basketball. So I guess I gravitate towards sickos a little bit, which that's all right. But we'll talk to Robert at 9:45, see what the scoop is with Brett Bielema. I really don't know what to make out of Illinois this year, so that'll be an interesting conversation with Robert. He's got a good pulse on that team, as we learned last year. A better pulse than most, certainly than a couple guys in Nebraska did. So really appreciate him joining us. But lots of great stuff to get to today. And, Nebraska had another scrimmage over the weekend, and that is obviously very newsworthy around here. I think there's a couple things that people really wanted or really ended up taking away from the comments from Rule and Satterfield, especially the thing from Rule, first and foremost, Javen Wright being out indefinitely with a health situation. Obviously wish Javen the best. But from a football standpoint, you kind of look at it and you go, okay, that's a guy that I know DB was really excited about in terms of what he could be this year. And that is a group that I think there have been a lot of question marks on in the linebacker room. So that's going to put a little bit, I don't know if added pressure is right, but it's going to put a little bit more spotlight and emphasis on a group that I think already people were going to be looking towards. You know, we talk about the defensive line. I think everybody feels pretty good about the defensive line.
Everybody.
We talk about the defensive back room, and we feel good about the front line. We understand there needs to be some depth developed with some younger guys, but I think most people feel pretty decent about that front line. There might be some questions at the second corner, but at least 4 out of those 5 spots we feel really good at. The 3 safeties and Tommy Hill at one of the corners, I think we feel really good about. The linebackers are where most of the questions are. You know, we've got obviously Bullock, who physically can pretty much do everything you would want him to do. Can you get that to happen on a play in, play out basis? Get that athleticism to show up on the field the way it does in testing and in the weight room. And then Javen Wright was I think they were planning on being a big part of that room as well. So that'll put an interesting emphasis on some guys that maybe we haven't talked about a ton. I know that they like some of those guys, especially Shavers. That's a guy you've heard brought up multiple times, kind of independently. Obviously, Mekhi Bear has played and started a decent amount last year after the previous staff kind of forgot about him or didn't think he could cut it. He comes out of nowhere last year. And he's kind of an example of why I guess I'm not terribly worried about the spot. You've got some at least somewhat knowns, right, between Bayer and Bullock. But then you've also got a bunch of guys that I kind of have a confidence in Dvorak to be able to find the next Mekhi Bayer, a guy that we aren't really talking about necessarily that could be really good at that spot. Maybe that's Vince Genatone. I know that a lot of people in Nebraska, since he's an in-state kid, are really excited about the fact that he transferred back to his home state after spending time in Montana. That's a guy that physically is a freak of nature. So much so that he actually made Bruce Feldman's freaks list, which is unusual for an FCS transfer that is not a super high profile guy nationally. But I think people understand the physical attributes that Vince Genatone brings to the table as a guy that was, at least in high school, 220 pounds and ran competitively in the 100 meter in high school. Like, that's a dude that I think ran a 10.5 in high school in the 100-meter dash, was a great wrestler. Like, Vince Genatone's a freak of nature. Like, he's one of those dudes that has everything you can ask for. In Bruce Feldman's freaks list, Matt Rule said he's like our highest jumper, fastest player at 230 pounds. He's a big dude with freaky measurables. Also, broad jumps 11 feet, which is a crazy number as well. Like, that's a guy that physically has everything you could ask for out of a linebacker. If you're able to unlock some of those things, and I don't know if that's this year or not. Right? He was kind of a later addition. He wasn't there in the spring. That's a dude that if you can unlock some of that physical ability and get it to show up on the field, you're in good shape. So that from a football standpoint, I actually feel okay there at the linebacker spot, even without Javen Wright. Obviously, you hope that whatever he's dealing with, he gets over quickly, just for his own personal. Coach Rule was talking about how hard he worked to get to this point. So you feel for a young man like that, where you just hope he turns out to be able to cash in on some of that hard work that he put in to be available this year. But as far as the actual room is concerned, I'm not super worried about it. They seem like they have a pretty good feel for that room. And, maybe I'm putting too much stock in the coaches at this point, but from what we've seen, I kind of talked about this last week with the offensive line after the Teddy Prohaska injury. After what we've seen from specific groups, I feel pretty confident that I can say, okay, this group is going to be able to develop and find guys that maybe we aren't talking about. Not every group on the team is like that. I know a lot of people are kind of, looking at me like, oh, you can't just give them the benefit of the doubt on everything. I'm not. I like, EJ Barthel, but I don't really have any track record to go off of in the running back room. So the running backs are kind of wait and see for me. Same thing with the wide receivers. I think that they did the best they could last year with the injury circumstances. Same with the running back room. But I can't look at Garrett McGuire's room and say, hey, they've clearly produced at a high level already. I could give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, what he was able to get out of true freshmen last year when he had to, I think is impressive. I like the guys they brought into that room a lot, and Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair. I like the idea, or I like the theoretical idea that, Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman are going to make a jump from year 1 to year 2. But I'm pretty much in wait and see mode on the wide receivers as well. Kind of the same thing with the quarterbacks. We saw terrible quarterback play last year. We have a new quarterbacks coach coming in. I'm okay being in wait and see mode on the quarterbacks. Do I think Dylan Raiola is going to be really good? Sure. But I don't have a track record to speak on that. So I'm in wait and see mode. So it's not everybody on the roster. It's not every position group on the roster, but there are a few position groups where I feel pretty confident in saying, like, yeah, they're going to figure it out. Defensive backs, I'm in wait and see mode. I think John Butler's a really good football coach, but we don't know anything about him with this team. His track record in the NFL would tell me, like, yeah, he's going to do really well. He's going to be fine. He's able to get the most out of guys. And I think there's some talented guys in that room. So I've got a little bit more confidence there than maybe I do at some of the other spots that I mentioned. But we don't know what John Butler looks like with this staff and with this group of players. So, yeah, I'm a little bit in wait and see mode there. But defensive line, offensive line, and linebackers, pretty impressed with how that went last year. I don't really have a ton of question marks there. And the question marks I do have, yeah, I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit because of what we've seen so far. This time last year, nobody was talking about Mekhi Bear. I remember when he checked into a game and made a play, and people are looking up on their phones and rosters like, who is that guy? And then we didn't know if the G was silent or not for like 2 weeks. And then we figured out how to say his name. This is not a guy we were talking about. This is not a guy that was supposed to matter in any way for Nebraska last year. So, if there's guys we're not talking about now, yeah, I'm going to feel like we maybe have an opportunity to be surprised a little bit the way we were with Mekhi Bear. Wouldn't surprise me if it's a guy like Vince Genatone who physically checks all the boxes. Wouldn't surprise me if John Bullock makes a leap, who also physically checks all the boxes. Or if Mekhi Bear just is better even than he was last year. That's a guy that we obviously saw play and we know can play at this level, at least to a certain degree. So there's already better options there than there would be at some other places. Now you hope Javen Wright comes back as soon as possible, obviously. But from a football standpoint, there is a little bit of wait and see there. But I think Dvorak has earned the benefit of the doubt. And I think he's one of a few guys on staff that have. But there's I think there's a hesitation and maybe a little bit of a concern just on a group that we weren't necessarily super high on coming out of spring or going into the fall. It's a group that has, I think, some more unknowns than we're comfortable with. And I also think, and maybe this is just me, I also think you're in a sort of strange situation with the linebackers in a 3-3-5 defense because they're sort of caught in the middle in the sense that, okay, you've got your defensive linemen, and then some of your linebackers are going to mostly act like defensive linemen, sort of that jack spot, where we saw Prince Will and MJ Sherman and some of those guys. And so some of the linebackers it's sort of like a 3-4 where something like the outside linebackers kind of feel like defensive linemen, but they're not really. They're edge rushers, but they do still have to do some linebacker stuff. And it's sort of these couple inside linebackers that kind of just get lost in the shuffle a little bit. And I don't think we know what to do with them to the same extent that we do in a more traditional, 4-3 type defense or even a 3-4 with the two inside linebackers there. I think there's a little bit of just hesitation on saying anything definitive about the linebackers outside of the guys that are coming off the edge, just because we don't have as great of a feel of what's being asked of them. And hopefully that's something we start to learn a little bit more about and figure out a little bit better as we go through year 2 under Tony White. But, I think for me, at least, that's part of it. In more traditional defenses, I have a better understanding of what those guys need to be doing and what I need out of those guys. And, frankly, we just haven't seen outside of Bayer and Bullock, we haven't seen a ton of these guys play very much. So I get some of the hesitation. I get some of the concern. But to be fair, we didn't see we saw some Javen Wright last year, but it's also not like he was a guy that we looked at. I mean, we probably talked about Bayer more than we talked about Javen Wright last year. And that's fine. Like that's not an indictment or anything. It's just, again, kind of putting perspective into this situation. We were hoping for a really big year out of Javen Wright, but he still may have that. We don't know what this health situation looks like or how long-term it'll be. All we know is Coach Rule did anticipate that he's going to be okay and hopes he can play at some point. Another thing that Coach Rule said that I thought was really interesting was talking about the quarterback position. That's one of those positions I think it's fair to wait and see on. He did mention he's probably going to name a starter at some point this week. I don't know that there's a lot of mystery around how that's going to go, especially, and not just because everything we assume, but if you listen to him on Saturday, he talked about how the first team offense had no turnovers, took care of the football. They did have some procedural penalties, but the second team offense he said he thought 4 turnovers. So if we know one thing, Dylan's been working with the ones, and they didn't have any turnovers. So whoever was working with the twos had 4 turnovers. Pretty simple math in my head there that even if it wasn't sure, you're probably looking at a Dylan Raiola as a starter. I as much as they've talked about turnovers and just not playing guys that turn the ball over, I think that was a pretty clear signal about what they're planning in terms of the quarterback spot, if it wasn't clear already. He also said something really interesting about the second group that, well, I'm going to touch on 2 things he said here, and he said them in different spots, but they connected in my brain. And the first one was about the quarterback room specifically. He said, everyone wants to look at Dylan and Danny's journeys as linked. They're not. They're on their own journeys. So hold that for a second in your brain. And then later, he's talking about the second group. He's talking about the second group offense and things like that. He goes, what concerns me at times is the second group. They're acting like they're the second group, and they should be acting like they're the first group. And the reason those 2 things connected in my head, right, is it would be really easy, especially if I'm going to operate under the assumption that Dylan Raiola is going to be named the starting quarterback. I hope that's okay with you. But it'd be really easy if you're Danny Kaelin to sit there and go, okay, my destiny is linked to Dylan's, right? If he's the starter, that means I'm not the starter. And that means I have to wait X amount of time before I'd have the opportunity to start at Nebraska, or I have to wait for an injury or whatever, and all of these things, right? He can look at it and go, hey, there's only one spot. You're not playing multiple quarterbacks unless you have to. Like, this is my lot in life because I'm tied to Dylan Raiola because we came in the same class. But that's thinking like a second stringer or third stringer. I don't know where Danny's going to end up on the depth chart. That's a second or third stringer thinking like a second or third stringer because he thinks his destiny, his journey is linked to someone else's in the first group. And I think that's kind of what Rule was touching on in that second comment about the second group acting like the second group when they should be acting like the first group. When you think your destiny is tied to the guy ahead of you, then that's really easy to do. Well, he's better than me and he's ahead of me right now, and so I'm in the second group. When in reality, your destiny really has nothing to do with the person that's ahead of you on the depth chart. It has a lot to do with the things you decide to do. And yeah, circumstances are going to change and opportunities have to become available for you. But it's football. Opportunities always come available, right? Whether that's at Nebraska, whether that's somewhere else, we don't know. But if you're Danny Kaelin and you go, okay, I really want to be a Power 5, Power 2, whatever the number is now, a power conference starting quarterback. And if you believe your coach when he says, I believe one day you're going to see both of these guys playing in the NFL. So if you're Danny Kaelin, you believe that, you can't operate like you're a backup or a third stringer or whatever you are on the depth chart this year. You have to operate like you're a future NFL quarterback in your preparation, in your workouts, everything, right? Because if you're doing that, you're not acting like a second stringer anymore. And you're acknowledging that your journey is not necessarily tied to Dylan's if you don't want it to be. Because you can go out and be prepared and get ready and first and foremost, try and chase him down. Like, that's what competitors do. They try and chase down the people ahead of them. They don't resign themselves to the fact that they're behind. They try and chase them down. And if you believe Coach Rule, Danny Kaelin has an it factor that he talked about on Saturday. That would lead me to believe that that's something he wants to do.
He's got it.
And even if he doesn't go and chase him down, that's going to make him better prepared for whatever opportunities come up. Let's not pretend like if Danny Kaelin, and I hope he stays in Nebraska, I really do. But let's not pretend that if Dylan Rowe is really good this year and Danny Kaelin kind of looks at the writing on the walls and he goes, okay, well, maybe I redshirted this year and it'll still probably be another couple years before I get a real opportunity here because Dylan is who we thought he is, making assumptions here. Then he's going to have other opportunities to go and play big-time college football somewhere else. So his journey is not linked to Dylan's by any stretch of the imagination if he doesn't want it to be. They're on two different paths, but you can only do that if you act like you belong in the first group, whether you are actually in the first group or not. And that's something I think Nebraska has to really get into the mindset of, and Coach Rule, kind of reflected that. He followed up that quote about second group. He said, when you're not a great team, you've got a lot of guys that play because they can kind of execute. When you're trying to make that leap into being a good team, everyone starts to execute. Now it's the guy that can execute and then go make a big play. That's where Nebraska's at. Last year, they were just playing guys because they knew what to do. Now you're trying to play guys that know what to do and can make plays. That's the next step in the evolution for Nebraska. And that only happens if you're competitive in not only your first group, but your second group and your third group as well. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. DB will be joining me shortly after practice. And Shane Schilberg already here, helping me out here on a Monday.
Coach Rule, by the way, he didn't seem as tired this time.
He didn't seem as tired this week. That's a good that's a good observation there, Shane.
I like it when Coach is in that type of form right there.
I agree. I like it when Coach is a little more personable, let's say. He didn't seem quite as irritated on this week as he did last week. Not with the media, just in general. He didn't seem a week ago. Didn't seem like he was in love with how the team performed. But there's a couple comments on YouTube. Will says DK strikes me as a competitor. I don't think he's going to back down from anything. I really don't know, Will. I don't have a good insight into his personality. I know some people around the Metro know him better than I do, which is to say I don't know him personally at all. I don't want to mischaracterize here, just from what I've seen him, how I've seen him play over the last couple of years. But I did think it was really interesting the way Coach Rule described him. That I wouldn't have pegged him as a guy that would say, oh, that's an it factor guy. He always seemed likable. I've heard people that do know him say, hey, he's a great kid, but it seems like there is a kind of leadership quality about Danny Kaelin that people are drawn to, similarly to the way they're drawn to Dylan Raiola. We've talked about, or Coach Rule's talked about that, and we've seen the articles and all the flying receivers down to Texas to get some work in and taking the offensive linemen out to dinner and stuff like that. That's a real thing at that quarterback spot. And the more leadership you can have in that room, the better. I mean, I understand Kaelin this year is probably your third stringer, and I think they would like to redshirt him. You heard Coach Rule talk about physically, his body needs to develop more to be ready and able to play at this level. But So I think they would like to redshirt him. Whether that means he sees game action or not, I don't know. I think they are going to rely on Harburg as the second stringer, as the guy that has real Big Ten game reps under his belt. I think that's probably something they're going to rely on at least early in the season. But let's be honest here. If the second team is turning the ball over, and I don't know if this is an outlier, I don't know if this is a common thing that's happened throughout practice. Satterfield would lead you to believe that's not really based on his comments. I don't say lead you to believe like he's trying to deceive you, just from his comments about it being a much cleaner fall practice than last year. I would think that neither squad is dealing with these kind of systematic turnovers as you did last year. But if Heinrich's turning the ball over too much in the second unit, then it wouldn't shock me if we saw Danny Kaelin at some point get second team reps. Now, everybody in the state is hoping that Nebraska doesn't have to rely on a second team quarterback at any point, right? But Coach Rule's kind of talked about this pretty much throughout the spring and fall, and he's been adamant. And I don't think it's just to avoid all of the talk about Dylan Raiola, where he says, hey, we're going to need 2 or 3 guys to get through this season. I think he genuinely believes that. He saw it last year where they needed 3 guys to get through the season. He sees it with the college football schedule getting longer and longer. And I genuinely do believe he's sitting there thinking, okay, not how do I get through 12 games? It's how do I get through 16 or 17? Because if you're looking at a full college football playoff and a conference championship game, you're looking at 17 games. And that's a really long season to get through with one guy. And so, I mean, you see it in the NFL a lot, where a lot of those teams go through a couple guys over the course of the season, well, even if it's for a game or two, right? So I don't know if that at any point this year is Danny, or if they just want to let his body develop. But I do feel like the way that Rule has talked about him has been really interesting, and more than just sort of more than just sort of lip service to the player and the situation that he's in. I think they really do appreciate Kaelin for sticking with it. Kaelin bought in before Dylan did, or was committed before Dylan did. And he's one of those guys that Coach Rule talks about all the time where, he was bought in before they started winning. Now, Dylan falls in that category too now. But I think that's part of the reason he's going to appreciate Danny Kaelin as much as it seems like he does. And I also think he thinks he's a good player. Like, I don't think he goes out there and says, that guy, I think you're going to look up and see both those guys playing in the NFL if he doesn't actually believe it. He doesn't strike me as the guy that's been dishonest with publicly for really anything I can think of. Now, he might just end up missing on some of these things that he says, but I think he genuinely believes it. Just like when he says Javen Wright's a pro, or when he says that, Bryce Benhart and Ty Robinson and Isaac Gifford and Ben Scott all would have had draftable grades if they had had chosen to leave this past year. I have no reason to doubt that. He's been in the NFL. He knows what that looks like. He's had a ton of guys drafted from Temple and Baylor. He knows what that looks like. He knows what pro football players look like. Now, whether guys reach that potential or not, that's kind of on them as much as it is on Coach Rule. But I think when he says that he thinks Danny Kaelin is a NFL caliber quarterback or professional level quarterback, I think he means it. And I think he's seen enough in order to say that. So it's going to be really interesting to me, because I think there is a really teachable moment here between these two guys, for the reason that Coach Rule talked about their journeys not being linked necessarily. It's really easy to look at those two guys and say, their destinies are tied to one another. I don't think that's the case. Coach Rule doesn't think that's the case, but that's the thing that you have to look at and say, is Danny Kaelin and is Dylan Raiola able to separate that as well? Let's get to the Hurrdat hotline here real quick. Fred has a question on transfer QB. Fred, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Well, not too bad.
What's
One
up?
of the things that you guys haven't talked about at all, and I don't know if he's still on the team, but there was a lower division quarterback that transferred in that was supposed to be pretty prolific in his league that he played. With the experience he's got, do you think he could move up to number 2 or number 3 on the depth chart?
Yeah, Fred, I appreciate the call. That's Jalen Gramstad that he's talking about, and coming from the NAI level. And Jalen Gramstad's really interesting because he was super prolific at the NAI level. He's got game experience. It wouldn't shock me if they put him into a game before Daniel Kaelin. Like that wouldn't stun me if that happened. Put him in over Heinrich Haarberg? Probably not, because Haarberg has, like I said, Division I, Big Ten experience. He's the only guy on the roster that has that at the quarterback spot. But it wouldn't shock me if Jalen Gramstad was your 3. That's kind of what, at least in the NFL, a lot of third-string quarterbacks are, is guys that know the game, have some experience, that maybe physically aren't what you would expect out of other guys. But, I mean, in the open practice, like I saw Jalen Gramstad throw, and, like, he's talented. He's a talented guy. I would be surprised if he got any higher on the depth chart than 3rd, though. That would be my guess, especially if they are trying to redshirt Danny Kaelin. Then they definitely could use Gramstad at that 3rd spot for sure. Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. DB joins me now here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
What
Oh, nothing. Just talk. We got football this week, DB.
Yeah, yes, we do.
We got real football.
Yeah, a couple good segments earlier too, man. I'm kind of dialed in on because ultimately, it's got to matter. The whole bringing the bottom closer to the middle, the middle closer to the top. I like Fred's call about Gramstad because I think ideally, Gramstad wins that number 2 job.
So that you can play Haarberg other spots. That's something really interesting about.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if. Yeah, I don't know. There's a part of me that's just like, man, they're going to rely on Haarberg with the starting experience at the 2.
Yeah, I mean, as a guy that's taken some meaningful snaps.
Yeah.
So the which okay.
I think
let's say you're right.
I think in a perfect world,
let's say it's the experience thing. So then it'll be how quickly they feel comfortable with Gramstad being able to transition quickly from D2 to or NAIA to or whatever to Power 4 football. Yeah. So like that may take some time, but I think if they had, and this is an opinion, I think if they had their druthers, Gramstad would win that job.
Well, and especially if for that argument, it would be style of play, right? Like Gramstad is likely more capable of executing an offense that looks closer to what they would have Dylan Raiola run than Haarberg is. Like you have to run a different offense for Haarberg, right? Even he's improved as a passer. We've seen that. Like he looks better. You're not going to ask him to do the things you're asking Dylan Raiola to do.
Correct.
Right? So Gramstad, you're going to have closer to the same offense if you can get comfortable with, or if you think he's gotten comfortable with the transition in terms of level. So I definitely understand both sides of that argument for sure. And you have the added bonus of, okay, if Haarberg doesn't have to play quarterback, you can go play him at H-back or tight end and get
because then
get a talented guy on the field.
Because that gets into the, all right, well, if you do that with H2, then it's, all right, what's Lindenmeyer like? What's Fedoni like? Like what's like the forgotten man
what's Bonner like?
And we're still forgetting about the guy that trots out there with the first group every time out there, and that's Borkacher.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have to keep reminding people that he plays on that team and he's really, really good.
Really good.
Like, but that may be about it for experience in that room, right? Because Smith Flores is like So you have Lindemeyer.
Yeah, Bonner's not really a tight end. I just kind of put him in that.
Right.
Line him up all over the place.
Yeah. So you have Fedoni, Lindemeyer, and Bork.
And
right?
that's really it for tight end.
For productive experience there. So, maybe there's.
And Lindemeyer hasn't played a ton.
No, but his evolution has happened.
Sure. Yeah. But I just mean if you're talking about experience.
Yeah. No.
It's not a ton.
Yeah. So that room could use
some experience too.
Some experience.
Yeah.
Right. Just some know-how, some protocol, especially if you play two guys at once. Like, what if you're in 12 personnel?
And I think they're going. I mean, I would expect them to.
So, like that, I think that would ideally that could help them too. So
for sure, and that makes sense.
There's multiple ways I think that it would be beneficial for Gramstad to be the two.
Yeah, and especially if you've got a guy if you've got Kalen. Because you have to get comfortable with a couple things in that scenario, right? You have to get comfortable with Jalen Gramstad's transition to Division I football. And I think you have to be comfortable with the fact that, okay, if we have to play Danny Kalen as the third, we're okay with it.
Yeah.
And so I think both, if you get good with both of those things, then yeah, I think you can.
And as DK evolves into the tempo and making reads and he gets a little stronger, you don't want to stack those years. So if you could separate, again, let's talk perfect world.
Yeah, if you could redshirt Danny this year.
Yep.
Only play him in 4 games.
You don't stack the years.
Yeah. So you've got separation between him and Dylan.
And if Dylan's a 3-year guy or something happens where you don't play a quarterback all season, which we know a lot of times doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason, like if, thumb ding or whatever. Like you're good there.
Yeah.
Like that's how you'd like to build the quarterback room.
And then you do the same thing with like a TJ Lateef next year.
At the exact same.
Redshirt him.
Yeah.
And now you've got 2 years of separation.
Correct.
And you kind of start to have.
That's how you want to do it.
100%. So yeah, I think in a perfect world, if they can get comfortable with Gramstad at the 2, I think sure. Yeah, I think they'd prefer that. But I think regardless, whether it's Harburg, whether it's Gramstad, whether it's Kalen, that thing that Rule was talking about with the number 2 mindset versus the number 1 mindset, I think is going to be really important.
So the beautiful thing, I really like that conversation because you have like real life practical applications, right? That you hear about every day, and how those guys have to think about it is, and we talk about this at the high school level too. You're not going in as a group all the time. Sometimes a position guy needs to. I got to stop saying that last 3 seconds or 5 minutes. You have to think about it how a quarterback does. You don't go in as a group at the quarterback spot. You go in as an individual.
Yeah, there's not line changes.
So
right.
Yeah. So and that's how you have to look at it at all the other positions.
Because most of the time, right, if something happens at linebacker, right, you're not switching in the entire second linebacker group.
Right.
You're sending in one guy.
Yeah.
Like Javen Wright goes out, you're sending in Shavers or Genatone, or you're not sending in all of the second unit linebackers.
Correct.
But
Correct.
it is
now you can get to a point where I could say, hey, give me 2 D line.
Yeah.
Or give me 2 secondary. You can get there.
Yeah.
But that's not always realistic.
No, you have to have a ton of depth and a ton of confidence in that depth.
So especially early on, you're situationally.
It's like when James Williams would come in on a pass rushing down or whatever. You're not sending in the whole second team defensive line.
And there's more practical applications. Why do you want to be in that top 8 or so wide receiver group if you've cross trained?
Because you're going to play.
Yeah. So
that's going to play.
So that means if you're a player and this guy's working in the slot and I know slot, and let's say I'm the 6th best receiver, I should be next. I shouldn't wait for the number 2 boundary or X receiver, right? I want the next complete guy. So I was having this conversation with somebody about Marquise Buford. Well, I don't want to have to move Buford to corner because I want to keep Buford at safety because, well, the thing about it is, if Buford's your next most complete DB, play that guy.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Best guys.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where.
Yeah. You just got to play him.
Play him. So if that's cornerback 2, then he's going to play cornerback 2, which means
somebody else going to have to play safety.
somebody else better move their ass up.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
which means all of a sudden, if you're a 2 at safety, you're not really a 2 at safety anymore.
you're the 6th best DB or the 7th best DB.
Or if you're a 3 at safety, you're the next guy up.
Yeah.
Right? You're just like, hey, you're going to have to go play.
Could very well be that case.
Because there's rotations too, right? It's not, we think about starters, especially in football.
So,
right?
like, if you want to look at it like in body type terms, is JJ, or let's say, is Jeremiah Charles the best corner, or is Bly Hill the best corner? And where is that in relation to who's my 5th best DB?
Yeah. Right. Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Because if they're not.
So you can be the next best corner, but not the next best.
But you might be the 10th best DB.
Correct.
Yeah. And
you want everybody elevated,
right?
So you're playing your top guys.
You want the difference between the last starter, so the 5th guy, and the 9th guy to be negligible.
That's how you have to sort out. So don't necessarily panic over. Oh, okay, so you got, let's say you got Bly Hill, Tommy Hill, Jeremiah Charles, Buford, and Sanders. Okay, so like if those are your 5, you're not trying to find 2 and 2. You're trying to find the top guy to play that position and the next top guy to play that position, whomever it is.
Right. And
does that make sense?
And then you're going to fill in,
because it's not how we think about it.
Yeah.
Right. You don't play the number 4 corner and you're 2 deep if he's not the 2nd or 3rd best corner.
Right. You're going to play the next best guy.
Yeah.
And so those guys have to be able and ready to be able to fill those spots.
Yeah. Why do you cross train those guys? Why do you cross train wide receivers?
Right. Well, and it's those are kind of the 2 areas where you see that the most, right? Or that or offensive line, where you've got guys that can kind of switch between spots.
Or how about this? Is Fidone your 5th best wide receiver more than, so he'd go out and empty, more than you'd be willing to play your 2nd tight end?
Sure.
If he moves.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, that 100% makes sense, because you're more comfortable with Fidone, and you go, hey, I'd rather have Fidone out there, even if he's not technically a tight end in this situation. That's because he's my next best pass catcher.
That's why the mentality matters.
And we'll get in.
The mentality to be the next man up matters, not just being quote unquote 2.
I want to get into that more, because
that's what I think Coach Rule's talking. I'm positive that's what he's talking about.
It sounds like common sense, but I think it's harder than it sounds.
I'll listen.
Coming up next, we're going to talk to Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you?
Sam, I am. Have you recovered from the Bears hype mania? Because it is in full swing, man. How you feeling?
It got eclipsed by Broncos mania last night.
Although I do, so Ravi and I will argue about this later. Bo Nix is a winner, man. Or a gamer. He may be better than Ravi's ever going to give him credit for.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I'm thrilled about what I'm seeing from the Bears. They have some good pieces around Caleb Williams. He made a couple of off-schedule plays that he's good at making. He's going to have to grow in some of the other things that the great quarterbacks are good at. But he's a reason to be excited, and that's a good team. I mean, they have a lot of pieces at this point. They fleeced Carolina on that trade that landed Bryce Young in Carolina, and so the Bears have good players, and so they should compete for a playoff spot. The darn shame is that if you're a Bears fan, which I am, is that the Lions are very good and the Packers look good. I don't know if they're going to. They didn't look good last night, but they look like they should be good, and they've had the Bears number for a long time.
So I'm into advanced stats sometimes, and I go down these rabbit holes. But Nix was 8 of 9 last night, and 6 of the completions were 3 seconds or less. Does that seem realistic on Sundays?
No, I mean he was throwing, those quick.
I mean, you talk about being in rhythm. I'm like, is that? But that is kind of Sean Payton-y.
That's what he wants to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say about Bo Nix. As a physical player, he has all the physical traits that Drew Brees had. Drew Brees was not the greatest athlete that ever lived.
Didn't have the biggest arm.
Right. So he has all those physical traits, and I think people forget that a little bit. But what Brees was really good at, he was super accurate, and he was really smart, and he was in a good system. So in theory, if Nix is all those things too, he can have just as much success. Drew Brees is the ultimate. He's 6 foot, but he's really sharp, and he can run an offense, and he stays in the pocket, and he doesn't make mistakes, and that's why he's a Hall of Famer kind of guy. Whereas Mahomes is a better quarterback than Drew Brees, but Mahomes can do some of those things, but he can also do all the other things that Drew Brees couldn't do. And so, but Bo Nix may well be somewhere in between those two guys if he can do all the things that Drew Brees used to do.
Well, that's $1 million question for Caleb Williams, isn't it? Right? He can do all the off-platform stuff, but because of how much he had to run for his life last year at USC, I sit here and I go, can he spend 4 quarters being on schedule?
Yeah, can he have 6 passes of 3 seconds or less?
Yeah, I have no idea. The other stuff's incredible to watch, but at a certain point, NFL defenses will be like, oh, so we'll just let you stay in the pocket, stay on schedule. Good luck.
Yeah, that's possible. I think, Williams also has to show he can be a consistent leader. He has sort of an Aaron Rodgers personality, and Aaron Rodgers didn't have to win the team over right away. He was able to sit on the bench for a couple of years, which probably suited him well. And Williams has to play right away. So if you look at the best quarterbacks in the NFL, the level of loyalty that they get from their teammates, whether it's Mahomes or it's Lamar Jackson or it's Josh Allen, it's really, really high. It's super high. And so those guys not only, playing with the quarterback, but they're kind of for him and all those things. There are exceptions over the years. There have been, but not that many. They're usually the quarterback really has to win over the team. So Williams has to win over the team from a culture standpoint. And it seems like he's doing okay with that, but he's going to have to do it every single day. Because it's not always easy.
Sam, let me ask you something as we kind of transition into Nebraska football. I love the fact, and I'll let you, you do with this what you will, because maybe I just hear what I want to hear, but I love the fact in the very last Q&A with him, he kind of got into being candid about what he lets out on chasing 3 and a little bit of the under the radar criticisms or people losing their minds over the fact that he put it out there about playing in big games and in front of people. And for a week, I felt like that kind of stole the show. Did you? I liked how he came back and gave us more information for us to process on what was the mission behind releasing that information.
Yeah, so I asked him at the very end if he had received any feedback.
Yeah.
On the documentary, and the answer that he gave, it was related, I think, to a Football Scoop tweet that said Matt Rule has to figure some things out there, or it's not good news or something. And
because some looked at that as a negative, oh shoot, Nebraska's in deep doo-doo. But then there are other people like Pat McAfee were like, oh man, this is a teachable moment. This is why he said what he said.
Right. Well, one thing I will say is that we are in a changing culture in terms of the way that athletes look at the world. And I'm going to have something more on this later this week, but I was able to see the Nebraska volleyball documentary early. And for one thing, people are going to want to watch it. It's really good. Second of all, it is not exactly what people expect. And so one of the things that I will say is that about it is people are going people who are kids age are going to in their their late teens, early 20s, they're going to like it a lot because it is the way it shows the program. It shows it as sort of experiential. And I think there's a lot of people that, who are older who just don't like that. And they don't like it when negative things are out there. or they don't like it when something might get spun in a certain way. And so sometimes Matt Rule will say things that on a camera seem very challenging and seem very, like, wow. I mean, he's angry at them. They must really be struggling right now. and I think our culture has changed. Like, that's not, a lot of the players do not see it that way. I think a lot of the players appreciate the conflict and the tension. They are not millennials. I'm not trying to knock millennials, but they're not. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're kind of a different generation. They've grown up in a different generation. And so, like, some of the things that you see on Chasing 3 are, they might strike you a certain way, but Matt Rule has a pretty good pulse on the guys that he's coaching. And what he's trying to do is get something out of them. And the way that he's doing it, he's built the relationships behind the scenes that get the buy-in. And then once you get that buy-in, you're able to say some hard things to everybody. Now, where that needs to be most true is at the quarterback position. So you've got to be able to bring whoever that quarterback is, probably Raiola, along in a way that's like you earn his trust, but simultaneously you're able to be tough on him, because the tough love, whatever they were trying to do at the quarterback position last year didn't work. Like they did not get good performances from anyone really but Heinrich Harper. So, and a couple of quarters from Chuba Purdy. So they've got to figure that position out. But I think in a lot of the other positions, they figured those things out. And so what he said was, well, this is things like that. Me saying that to them is part of why we're going to win, is because we need to have tough love and hard truths told. And again, culture is in the midst of shifting toward that, as no other way to put it. And I think the Chasing 3 doc does a pretty good job. You can't avoid it. I mean, I think there's just conflict in sports, and people might be surprised to know that, but it's been there for a long time.
Yeah, and I think if you want, because one of the things that we gravitate towards about him is that he's authentic, right? So if you want authenticity, some of that's going to be the case, because in 1 minute, and we saw it, like you and I are texting about quarterback play, and he's ripping Canuck for fighting, right? I mean, he's clearly not happy, but Sam, at the very end, who did he have run out and go catch punts as a drill for the lineman? He used Canuck, right? So
yeah,
in 1 minute he can rip him a new one, but then love on him, right? Because I think ultimately that's what people want to be led. I don't care how old or young you are. Deep down, we want to be led. And so I like the fact that he can do that. And I was losing my mind last week because I couldn't, wasn't I?
You were every day.
I couldn't figure out why we were so negative. I'm like, we're being a bunch of babies. Like, he's not doom and glooming. He's just teaching. He's telling the truth. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you just got to hear that. And I know some people locally, and I get it, right? If Sid were to say, man, I didn't like him putting that out publicly. Like, I get the pushback, but not for if those guys can handle being told the truth, they'll be better for it. If they can't, they're not playing anyway. So it's like, you're not going to be hurt either way.
No, and so many things have changed again. Like, a lot of different things in college athletic have changed, and I'm not trying to defend Deion Sanders per se when I say this, but like, if you watch some of their practice videos, again, there's middle-aged journalists that see that stuff and they think it's, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, but that is not. A lot of what's on those videos is what players want to see. Like, he's yelling at people, they're yelling at him, whatever. Like, people want that. And we may not like the shift in sports culture. I mean, I'm willing to have that conversation. But like, where things are moving is in a direction of just a lot of transparency and a lot of honesty. A lot of coaches are younger now, 32, 35, 36 years old. They don't have a sort of stoic nature to them. They're not Lloyd Carr sitting over here.
Yeah, you have to manage emotions now more than ever. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, just part of it.
It is. It's part of why Jim Harbaugh, who I mean, almost everyone universally sees as a strange person, was able to reach his players. I mean, and again, we don't need to get into like what Michigan did or didn't do up there, but he reached his players and was very effective in that way. And you got to give him a lot of credit for how he did it. in that way, and he'll do the same in the NFL because the sports and the nature of sports is changing.
Sorry, Sam, you're gonna get me all fired up about Dion stuff.
It's ridiculous.
God, it's like putting bird crumbs out, man.
I mean,
so different. It's so different from chasing three. Like, it's basically his son goes there and just shoots whatever's going on, and they kind of cut it, and it's like, but it's compelling. It's like raw footage of Deion Sanders, and it's, again, the chasing three thing is way more polished, and it is getting better. So the most recent ones have been pretty good. There's been moments during the chasing three where it feels kind of like a BTN doc, and that's fine. The most recent chasing three was the best of the bunch. And my sense is the next one will be even better. Like, they're getting, they're starting to turn up the intensity a little bit, and I think that's good. You want to sell both a program that's good, but also just a little bit dangerous. Like, there's just a little bit of risk and tension involved in winning football, and you have to be able to display that to people. And I think that documentary has done an increasingly better job of doing that.
I would describe Colorado as interesting in the same sense that, like, cigarettes are interesting. Like, they're fun, but they're also going to give you cancer and kill you. Like, it's very toxic. That's how I would describe Colorado. Like, it's compelling, but not for good reasons.
That's fair. Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens. They play on September 7th. Nebraska better win that game.
Yeah, I need him to win that pretty bad.
They really do.
I got a lot riding on that one, Sam.
Yeah.
I wanted to switch to high school here for a second with the Super Six just came out. DB and I were having this conversation because we were kind of curious about, and I know you've probably talked about the criteria in past years and stuff, but it seemed like this year, with as many really good football players as there are in the state, as many guys that have high major offers or Division I offers, like there probably had to be some like separators and tiebreakers, right? Like, could you kind of get into that process of like how you decided, like, okay, was it production? Was it level of offer? Was it level of competition in the state? Like, how did we get to this 6?
First of all, I think it's probably time for us to expand it. I think when it became the Super, probably to 8.
What, Elite 8?
Yeah. And that's something we're going to
the grade 8.
Yeah,
I'll say you better be careful with Elite 8. That's copyright.
There were many years in this thing where we would spotlight players who were going to FCS and turned out to be great FCS players like Ethan Stick, but Nebraska just wasn't. They just weren't offering guys, and so like part of what happened there for a while is it's like, well, 6 is reasonable. There was one year where we had to go into Western Iowa and we went all the way up to Sioux City, and it was getting hard.
Was that Blaze's year?
No.
Jones? Who was it? I know it was somebody.
I think it predates
Fedoni?
my arrival, but I think Fedoni was part of one. We went up to Sioux City. It predates me, but I think Wager was part of one of them a long time ago, and then Malloy, a running back from up there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, like I think there's the thanks to the Warren Academy and other places, there's just better and better football players in the state, and they're getting more offers and more attention, and so there's probably time. It was really tough to leave Caden Vermas off. He's a really, really good player, one of the best players in high school football. I think part of what we look at is just potential at the next level, and when there's an opportunity for a kid who's kind of carrying a team, and it can be challenging to compare what Connor Booth's doing at his level of football.
That would be one where it could come down to productivity, right?
Those were literally the 2 guys we talked about, were Caden Vermas and Connor Booth.
So Booth's really productive, and has had an incredibly statistically impressive career.
It's kind of crazy.
He was in 2 different offenses. So this most recent year last year, I suppose, they moved to an offense that featured him as a tailback. Prior to that, he was, averaging, 17 yards a carry as a fullback. Connor got a very early offer from Nebraska, and, kind of shut it down. I don't know what his recruiting process would have been if it had gone on longer. I think Connor's a very, very interesting prospect at the next level. So that's probably one that we discussed the most. That was probably one that was discussed a lot. Christian Jones is on the team. That makes sense. He's a really compelling figure in person too.
Isn't he something?
Yeah, he's a real team builder, and he's the one that took everybody out to breakfast. He's just kind of Nebraska would do really well to get him because he's a Garrett Nelson type personality. I think a little bit better athlete than Garrett, but he's a gatherer.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's so stinking thoughtful, right? And it's how he's approached recruiting, right? The master's piece blurb that he had in the article, I was like, that is so him. The very first thing he says to me this morning, it's 5:08. The lights aren't even on yet because we screwed that up. And he's like, how we doing this morning, coach? How was your weekend? Like, that's how he thinks. You know what I mean? He's not, there's no grumble bugs or, I'm here again, or I felt like I just left here, or why the heck aren't the lights on? Like, there's none of that, and it's just, and that's how he's approached recruiting. And sometimes, unless you sit down and talk to kids, you can't really appreciate where they're coming from with stuff like that.
That's right. So he's on there. Chase Lofton is on there. That makes sense. Chase is a very good prospect. Here's Mooberry, who, again, if you talk to his new high school coach, he will tell you that he thinks he might be an elite tight end at the next level. Pierce's tracks the defense, but Pierce has got a lot of potential, and I think everybody can see that. And then Jackson Carpenter. I think,
that one was a good one because the stats, the productivity doesn't match his talent level, and a lot of that's not his fault. Full disclosure,
quarterback play, and
you watch those guys on film, and it's like, man, this guy would get a target or a touch 1 out of every 4 snaps. Somehow.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a very good player. And then the last one was Tyson Terry. And, people are kind of split on Tyson because of his size, but Tyson was the first person that we put on, and I said it's just non-negotiable.
That's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer.
But there are people that say, well, I don't know. He's 6'2", and I'm like, Tyson Terry is to me the number one.
He might be the best. I mean, he's probably the best football player in the state. I mean, it's
in the discussion.
At this level, he is. He's obviously an incredible wrestler, and again, I have no issues with his height. I think players like that do really well at the next level, and he can be. I think he's going to be an excellent player at Nebraska. So, Terry was the first one. He was the first person we picked, and that was some time ago. That was, I think, before even the 23 Super 6 came out. Like, Tyson Terry's going to be on the team. So that one was maybe the easiest because I'm just a big respecter of defensive linemen. Like, if you're good at that at any level, you have my utmost respect. It's a really hard position to play. You take a lot of abuse and punishment, especially as an interior lineman. And then watching him last year, he could really tear teams apart. So, he was an easy one. It's going to be very hard next year too, which is why we're going to have to think about expanding. And I know there's only like 3 guys right now with power offers, but that's going to change. In a hurry.
So Sam, and we just got a couple of minutes here. I want to get to something that Coach Rule was talking about with twos and competitiveness and the way that you think about things. In a developmental program like this, how important or integral is it for you, do you think, for folks to feel like I have to think as an individual but have a collective team goal? Because it appears like this staff will move towards playing the next best individual, even though it has to fit in the team concept.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's how depth charts are going to work.
You're always trying, within that team, you always have to try to appeal to 2 different sides of it. Your own personal growth, your own personal development, side by side with the team getting better. What I would say is that the very best programs have those qualities, and again, I think at times, for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me, we've tried to present something like the ideal is something different than personal success leading into team success. I don't know. Like Nebraska is going to become a better football program if their best recruits maximize their potential.
Yeah, your blue chip nugget that you can't. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, like you gotta there's nothing wrong with the very best players becoming as good as they can be. And some of it, I think, is media coverage. There's just a lot of people around the program, and everybody's trying to kind of tell the same stories. And we always kind of land in these sort of, Frank Capra places where it's like, let's look for the guy that nobody believed in, who's, made his way to playing 17 snaps. And those are good stories. But Nebraska's not won a lot of football games in recent years because they don't have enough elite players maximizing their potential. And I do think Rhule's going to be good at that. I think he has the ability to reach that player. I don't know if Scott Frost, I don't know enough about Scott Frost's process and approach to know what he was thinking there, but I think other coaches at Nebraska have struggled. Bo Pelini could reach that guy, let's be honest. And Dominican Sue became the player he did because of Bo and Carl Pelini. They deserve a lot of credit for that. So Bo understood how to reach him. But not every coach does, and I think Rhule probably does.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Got a lot of interesting stuff we got to get into.
I'll say this real quick about DK.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that I've always thought about him, even though he didn't always rise to the occasion in crunch time. The one thing that I think we underestimate about players that have a tremendous amount of ability is we always think the mental maturation is right alongside.
That they're like linked together.
And they're not.
Yeah.
I look back at just watching and go back to the Gretna game a couple of years ago, and they blew some late leads and kind of what was going on in that culture with some teammates and stuff. And I always wonder, like, how can I say this? I don't know if he believed in his own ability to flourish at that level, like emotionally, like his physical gifts.
So let me,
you know what I mean?
Let me give an example here. So
sometimes I wonder, like, I think he thought he was good, but I don't know how much he believed that was enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll tell players, I just had this conversation Saturday after our scrimmage. I said, hey, listen, I can only say this to you so many times. And I'm going to say this and I'm going to leave this right here. You do with it what you will. Think about it over the weekend. Let's come back and get to work on Monday. I'm just going to tell you, regardless of your age, you belong here. The question is, do you believe that? Right. And so that's really what I'm saying. Like,
what did Rhule talk about? The two bears. First thing, do you belong here? That's the first bear you got to kill.
Like, so I wonder, because now he's kind of oozing a little more confidence, but he has a little more help too. But he was always good.
And he
was always good physically.
Which is funny because he's in a worse position in terms of.
Yeah, but he's heard some of this stuff before. I think to separate, and I got to ask Coach Huffman, but he'd be honest. Like, I think the difference between him winning that job early and not winning that job was probably arm strength, right? The other stuff, he was really starting to get. So I always wondered, like, when he or if he did ever become comfortable enough in his own skin
in that situation.
Yeah, but I do love the fact. Because I said this early, and I'm glad we're starting to hear more about it now and the BTN guys. What did I say about the temperament in that quarterback room?
Though you liked it a lot.
They're getting it right.
Yeah.
When I don't know how else to say it except for, because I'm not saying, hey, think like a quarterback. I'm just saying when that position from a competitive standpoint and thinking collectively, individuals thinking collectively, when that room is right, it's powerful.
Yeah, it has a ton of impact on the rest of the team. Well, and
there's only a few of them.
Right. But they're an obvious leadership group, right?
It's crazy.
So
but you can't just have one in there.
Right. Because if Dylan Rail was
stuff happens
like that, but Heinrich Harburg's a malcontent and Danny Kalen's just looking for where he's going to transfer.
It's hard for that guy to be who like, how are we going to know that whomever you called the leader is the leader if everybody else is acting like that?
Yeah. like when you've got a bunch of leaders and then they all follow a certain guy, then you know he's a leader.
Listen, I always say sometimes you got to be a good follower.
Yeah.
Too.
And that's part of leading sometimes is being a good follower.
Mhm.
A leader.
But the interesting thing about Danny in this situation, there's a couple.
Sometimes it's like that in your own household.
So there's a really I don't want to mischaracterize Bellevue West at all. So I'm trying to be careful because I don't know. But there's certain people that thrive in certain types of situations
Mhm.
and certain people that do not do well there, right? So I think it's entirely possible, like if you're DK, that maybe whatever that situation was, just for you emotionally, wasn't going to allow you to maximize where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you'd get taken out of that situation, now you're in this other situation. And it's entirely possible that could have been the same way if Satterfield was still coaching quarterbacks. Like it might be as specific to, hey, Glenn Thomas understands the way Danny Kaelin operates in a way that is able to allow him to flourish.
Although I will say this for the Sat thing.
Mm-hmm.
After seeing a couple live scrimmages last year, what I come back and tell you?
You're a big fan.
I said, hey man, DK, like I'm not blowing smoke.
Oh yeah, you said he was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said he looked really, really good last spring.
Again, I'd rather be right than well-liked.
Well,
so, and listen,
it's not a Sat thing for me. It's just I'm just using examples of like different.
No, just like it's not a
Bellevue West thing.
It's not. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's not a Coach Huffman thing.
I'm just saying certain people's personalities thrive in different situations.
And in high school, it's different because I think, and I wish it wasn't, but the reality of it is, sometimes your culture, whatever it is, you have to be willing to take on maybe some talented players that may not always be all in with the team concept.
Sure.
But you're not cutting guys.
Yeah.
High school coaches, they want to win just like anybody else. And so it's always about what you're willing to take on and the risk reward. Every school. Go every school.
You're weighing that at every place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, all of a sudden there's guys that are not playing in our secondary that it's hard, right? Sometimes you just have to say, okay, like you don't want to be.
You don't want to be a part of what we're doing here.
Super talent,
at a certain point, it doesn't matter how good you are.
There's a way we do things.
Yeah.
And it's just non-negotiables. And so when other people see that, or you're functioning, or Coach Sat holding guys accountable all the while we're struggling offensively, like there's value in that.
100%.
And those were a lot of the things that I was saying where you don't get that life without him in it. Like you needed his resolve.
Yes.
You needed his conviction. It may come across as being stubborn or whatever it was that we thought, oh, I've seen that play before. Oh, or on third down, they're going to do that. Like, but there's something about not wavering and having some resolve. And it only strengthens. Then you address the weaknesses because you don't have time to fix it kind of real time, right? You're trying to put a Band-Aid over whoever that lady was that had that song, the Band-Aid over a bullet hole.
That's Taylor Swift.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's called Bad Blood. It features Kendrick Lamar.
Fine. I get distracted. I don't want to be all on the Swiftie. No disrespect. I forgot who sang it. But other players are watching that.
Yeah.
So then you go and address it at the end. You're like, okay, hey, let's where do we need to get better? I like your temperament here. These guys need this here. Let's go get a guy that can do this here. Let's move this guy here. That part is for the adults in the room. What the players see two things. Hey, these guys are always trying to get better, and they're holding themselves accountable too. So when they do it to us, it's not for show.
Yeah.
They're being authentic. That's how you can do things or release things in chasing three. Because there had to be some trepidation. I'm guessing.
Maybe.
I don't know. Hey, Coach, were you a little leery of putting that thing out there?
Maybe.
I bet he was.
You think?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he knows.
I bet he thought about it. Because you are exposed. I mean, look at the impact.
Yeah, but some of that, and we'll get to this later because we've got 9 o'clock open. We've got to talk about it. But some of that's just people not being smart enough.
Listen, I'm not belittling aptitude. What I'm saying was
emotionally mature enough. Maybe that's better.
I felt like between that and the left tackle thing,
I just needed people to be a little bit better. I needed people to process information better.
Like it was incredible.
People were losing their minds. That's why I went off for like 3 days last week about the left tackle spot.
Well, why do you think that response when Sam asked him the question took 2 minutes?
Yeah. And we'll get to that. We'll play.
He clearly felt it too.
We'll talk about it in the 9 o'clock hour. Coming up next, we're going to talk some NFL with Frank Schwab
Let's go.
from Yahoo Sports here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and we're brought to you by our friends at unionomaha.com. Make sure you get over to unionomaha.com to get tickets for their upcoming friendly against the Bellevue University men's soccer team. 6:30 p.m. this Wednesday at Warner Park. There's going to be a lot of fan activities, raffle. There's going to be some games and activities going on at halftime as well. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get your tickets for that one. We are efforting our guy Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports to talk a little NFL. We were talking some NFL quarterbacks in the break here. And you're kind of high on this rookie class so far.
I'm waiting for somebody to tell me to chill.
I mean, but my only thing is it's preseason, so you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Right, and
that's it.
And I get it.
They have looked good.
I have seen a lot. The game has changed since the fall of '97, but I do have a sense of pregame or preseason game plans and stuff.
Yeah,
I still think it's hard.
Oh yeah.
And it's granted, it's clearly not as hard as regular season game with intricacies and game planning, but I just think the command of the quarterbacks has just been better than I thought. Even though I did think
thought some of these guys were good.
Yeah, Penix got to chill the other night, and Morris is like, yeah, we're good with where.
Yeah, they feel like
Penix
they know what they have,
and I was like, wow, good talk, and I'm glad because I like Penix.
Yeah,
right. I'm glad because I like McCarthy, and I get the whole savior thing and the 2-day turnaround with McCarthy after a Friday night. But I did think he could be pretty good, and then the top 3 haven't really disappointed.
No. Well, and it's it kind of reminds me of it's like the off-season champs thing. It's like, would you prefer they be bad in preseason? Do you want it? I get that it doesn't get you anything inherently, but it's better than the alternative.
One of the things I would have asked Schwab is
because I remember back in the day. I remember because I was not
back in the day.
Back in the day, I was not a Cam Newton guy coming out of college.
Back in the day,
I was like, I don't think everything he did at Auburn was one read and go. I didn't think that was going to translate to the NFL. And then he had a terrible preseason. He passed 30%. It was completion percentage was 30% or something ridiculously bad. And he looked terrible. And then he goes off and has one of the best rookie seasons we've ever had from a QB. So people point to that a lot to say, you don't have to do well in the preseason. But you would have felt better if he had, right? You don't want to sit there and say, it's better to do poorly in the preseason. You still want them to perform well to give you some level of comfort that they're adjusting to what's happening here.
And what ailed Cam coming out still probably plagued him.
Yeah, just
throughout
didn't matter
his
as
career.
much as it.
He just was so gifted physically
that he was able to overcome it.
Yeah.
And that's not something that translated in the preseason, obviously. That did for most of the rest of his career while he was healthy.
Because Shane, did we get him? Because I don't want to get into this if we have Schwabi.
We have Frank here. Yeah,
okay.
Joining us now is Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports. Frank, how are you this morning?
Hey, what's going on?
Frank, good morning. Hey, I'll get right to it. As a diehard Steelers fan, even I'm sick of seeing the Steelers come up on television every single day. But I'll say this because, in my opinion, right, I think Fields raises the ceiling a little bit, but he clearly lowers the floor too. How rare is this where you have a real quarterback battle when the contract doesn't really matter? You don't have to inevitably play a guy because of money. This is truly like a one-year tryout.
Yeah, everything about the Steelers quarterback position is pretty weird and rare. I mean, again, the whole Russell Wilson thing, and people say, Mike Tomlin promised him the starting job. Well, he's a 1 year, $1.2 million guy. Like, you have nothing invested in him. Like, that's a guy running down on the punt team. That's kind of salary he's making. So I don't think they're beholden to him. And, Justin Fields kind of fell in their lap because Kenny Pickett threw a temper tantrum and they traded him away. So they didn't expect to have Justin Fields. I mean, I just watch his, like, look, being based in Colorado, I've seen a lot of Russell Wilson the last couple of years, obviously. And I just don't think it's there anymore. Like, he had a great, great career. He really did. I mean, it was a Hall of Fame track, really, and his game wasn't going to age well. He's not a guy who's going to play well into at 40 years old or anything like Tom Brady. Like his whole game was based on a lot of improvisation, making things out of nothing. Well, that's a lot harder to do when you're 36. So I look at them and I wonder, why not start Justin Fields? What's the holdup? Like, Justin Fields is very flawed as a passer, obviously, but at least he does some things. He gives you some hope that maybe there's something there for the future for that next couple of years. Whereas Russ, there's just, even if it's decent this year, that's all it's going to be, is decent, and there's nothing for the future. So either way, I think the Steelers are kind of stuck and just kind of. I mean, Mike Tomlin will still find a way to go 500 because he always does, but it's been ugly for that offense this preseason.
Frank, I'm glad you brought up Denver, because we were just talking off air a little bit whether we thought Bo Nix and how good he's looked so far is more of a credit to Sean Payton and his acumen, or is it kind of an indictment of what we saw the last couple of years from Russell Wilson? Or, I mean, I'm sure the answer is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bo Nix has a long way to go to have Russell Wilson's career. Let's say that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to just sit here and just say that, it was, completely because Russell Wilson stinks. But Russell Wilson never fit Sean Payton's offense. Like, Sean Payton wants a guy who is going to be very accurate from the pocket, make quick decisions, get the ball out. This is what the defense shows you. Throw the ball here. That ain't Russell Wilson. That's not what made him great. That is Bo Nix. Like, he is very adept at seeing the defense. He's got a lot more zip on his passes than I gave him credit for. I didn't think he had that kind of arm strength. He shot off a couple times last night where it was like, all right, there's some velocity there. You kind of forget he's a first-round quarterback because of how often he was trashed in the process. Everybody, how could you draft Bo Nix? Well, what are you going to do? Like, not draft him? The Broncos need some answer at quarterback, and I think he fits what Sean wants to do really, really well. He's looked good. And I think the funny thing is, I kept saying over and over in the offseason, like, one of the reasons you draft Bo Nix is not to have him in a competition, not to have him sit and learn. He had 61 career starts in college. It's a record. He's 24 years old. He should be out of the box, ready to go. Like, that's one of the benefits of drafting him. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing the experience he has, albeit on a college level, the maturity, the age. You're just seeing it come together really, really quickly for him. And I think that the Broncos obviously are going to name him the starter very soon here. And they should be happy with what they've seen. It's not going to be perfect. Like, I think people, Broncos fans are going nuts over Bo Nix and how he's looked. There's going to be bumps in the road once teams start blitzing. This is the preseason. Let's remember he's going up against Packers backups. But everything that you could want right now from the Broncos for their rookie quarterback, you've seen it so far.
Going into 2025, because they both had the opportunity, which New York team will look back and wish they drafted a quarterback in 2024?
I think the Jets had a plan this year. It's all in. Like, you gotta see this Aaron Rodgers thing through. So drafting Fashanu at tackle was fine. Like, that's what they were gonna do, and they weren't gonna draft a Nix or a McCarthy or anything. The Giants, man, I don't know. Like, they just obviously must not have liked any of the other quarterbacks, and that's fine too. You don't. Look, when you're drafting a quarterback, they were 6th overall. When you're drafting a quarterback in the top 10, I mean, you are entering into you're going to get fired if this guy doesn't work out. Like, this isn't a late first. This isn't a second. This is, hey, you're sinking or swimming with this guy. And if Michael Penix wasn't their cup of tea, then don't do it. And draft Malik Neighbors and figure out quarterback next year. So I don't blame them for that. But yeah, Daniel Jones just is not it. Like, he's never been it. They got suckered into that $40 million a year contract because of the playoff run they had, which was a really, really lucky playoff season for them. It was a bad decision. They're seeing it now. They know. They got it. That's why they tried to trade up for Drake May. And it's but I don't blame the Jets. Look, if you're going to,
I don't know when Sauce and those guys come up, it would have been really nice.
I know, but
to have a quarterback.
Their whole deal was let's get Aaron Rodgers, let's make a Super Bowl run, and I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I really don't. Like,
they still can do it this year.
Good.
Like, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
This is it. Yeah,
They got one shot.
It is rare to see that in the NFL when you are all eggs in the basket of one season. Like, if it don't work out this season, everybody's fired. Like, everybody's gone, everybody's resetting. So, but if you look at that roster is absolutely loaded. They could win a Super Bowl this year. That is their ceiling. We'll see. They're one of the most interesting teams in the NFL for sure. Whereas the Giants are really, really awful. They're going to be no interest whatsoever in watching them.
Which old school foes would you rather be? Because they have some similarities. Would you rather be the Rams or the Seahawks going forward?
Oh, that's really interesting. They do have a lot of similarities. I was going to say, well, I really like Mike McDonald as coach, but how can you not like Sean McVay? He's awesome. I think just
playing a lot of young guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, they did. I thought the Rams were going to win 3 games last year. I really did.
Yeah.
I looked at that roster.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Awful.
They were awful.
They were awful, and Sean McVay dragged them to the playoffs. All of a sudden, Puka Nacua is the next coming of Marvin Harrison or something. So. I think I'd pick the Rams just because I love their infrastructure so much. But I'll tell you, don't sleep on the Seahawks this year. That team's got a lot of talent. If their offensive line is decent, like, they could be a really, really good team. I like Mike McDonald a lot. Those are too fun. That's a good question because I think I'd take the Rams, but I totally get an argument for the Seahawks.
That's Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports. Frank, we will have to catch up again soon. Great stuff.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks.
That's Frank Schwab from
I wish we could have got him
Sports
on time. He was good.
We'll have to get him back. He was really good, and there's plenty more to dig into with him as we've still got a couple weeks before the NFL starts. We'll dive back into college football as we kick off hour number 3 next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. There's this thing we've kind of trying to get to for a little bit here, and there's a couple things that Coach Rule talked about, and you've got this idea of them being really close to being a good team, and kind of in conjunction with that, he talked about, and I mentioned this earlier. He talked about the difference in the types of guys they're going to play this year, right? Last year, when you're not very good, you're kind of just playing guys that can execute it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've been there as a coach where you just be like, hey, I need the guys.
You're playing guys that
they just know what they're doing.
That are just better than the worst guy.
Yes, you're just playing the only guys that know what they're doing. Yeah. I remember I had a JV practice at Concordia Junior High, my first year coaching ever. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to play whatever guys do what I ask them to do. I don't care which 5 it is. Mm-hmm. Those are the 5 that are playing. And I did it. And I ended up actually finding a really nice player. But, like, I was just over it. I was like, hey, we're not, like, if you don't know what you're doing, I don't care how good you are.
Yeah.
That's
why I always would laugh when people say, oh, man, coaches play the best players. No, they don't.
They play the guys that do what
they play the guys they trust.
Yeah, they play the guys that do what they ask.
Hopefully, those are your best players.
You'd like it, but it's not always the case. Yeah. Right?
You know who's funny telling stories about that?
Who?
Like Gilbert Arenas and those guys on their pod.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why didn't such and such player Paul George?
Yeah.
George was like, man, this dude was unreal.
He was the guy from Iowa State. And he was talking about the guy from Iowa State, right?
Yeah.
It was just a bucket. And he's like, he never played.
Yeah.
He never played.
Because, you just don't trust those guys.
Especially like defensively, right? You don't think they're going to cover your assignment or whatever. So, he's talking about these guys, and it kind of goes into our conversation. We were talking about the depth chart earlier, right? About guys acting like they're starters instead of just acting like their second unit. And we mentioned this earlier. It sounds really simple, right? If you're on the team and you're a second stringer, I would look at it, or you think outside from like not being in a competitive environment, you would think you'd be like, oh, I'm right there. Let's keep grinding. We'll get that number 1 spot. Or you look at it like you were talking about in the defensive back room, their wide receivers, where it's like, oh, I might not be a starter, quote unquote, but I'm the next best guy, which means I'm definitely playing a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
means you have to have a starter's mentality.
Yeah. I just had this conversation over the weekend.
Yeah.
Right. Where I'm talking about specifics and, hey, too deep. And I said, listen, just put yourself in a position where you're in the top X amount of DBs.
So that you're the next guy up.
Yeah.
That's all you're looking for.
That, like the too deep thing, like, cool, man. Like I'm pumped, but it's not good enough.
But be the next guy up.
That's the thing, right? Just because, that would be like, Mazuka's a bad example. Like Latovsky saying, no, because it was Latovsky last year. Pick a guy. Gatula.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
Last
Gatula.
year.
Yeah.
Hey, number 2 tackle, but maybe the number 9 offensive lineman.
Yeah, which means he wasn't next up.
So even though you put the next group in, you're like, oh,
let's move this guy over here because we think he's a little bit better than
you
that
may
guy.
be like 3 spots down.
Yeah.
So you may be behind whomever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't want to do is, okay, this guy goes down. Shoot, you're not here. Malcolm, you go here. Buford, you go here. Branch, you go here, or not Branch, but whatever.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you may be in the quote unquote too deep, you need to think like, I need to be in the top 6 or 7 guys that my coach trusts.
And
forget the position.
Then I have to cross train to be able to put myself
forget the position
physically in a spot.
That's how wide. It's like, Jalen Lloyd's world changed when he could work out of the slot.
Yeah.
Because guess what? You're not the number 2
focus
Z anymore.
Yeah, you're not the focus of the defense as one of the outside guys.
You're like the next guy up if something happens to a guy.
Mm-hmm. And
that's where you want to be, right? So who was the next why did we not talk about the offensive line when they had injuries last year?
Because they played their next best guys rather than having to dig down and be like, okay, who's our second
Who's our next right guard?
Yeah, who's our second best guard
Yeah.
when Ethan Piper goes out? Who is our second best center when Ben Scott misses a couple games? Who is our second best tackle when Turner Corcoran misses a game? It's like, no, who's our next best lineman?
That's the kind of stuff that Coach Rule's talking about.
But let me ask you this, because
does that make sense?
No, 100% it makes sense. Okay. But you have to cross train in a way that makes that feasible.
Yeah.
So there's a physical component to that.
And you have to have
but then there's the mental component, which is what I wanted to talk about, because I think it's honestly, when he was having that conversation, when he was having that said that bit in the press conference, first thing I thought of was the mid-90s running backs room. And not just because you're my co-host, but because that would have been, I still think that would have been one of the most challenging rooms to have been in.
Yeah.
Both from a physical and mental standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got multiple NFL guys in that room.
100%.
You can know you're good and still understand you're not the first option.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that's a really challenging room to be in.
I got you.
Because I think that would be a really easy room to start thinking like a second stringer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where you're like, hey, I'm not beating out Lawrence Phillips.
Right.
I'm not beating out Amon Green.
Well, you have to concede that somebody's better than you.
Which is a hard place to start for a lot of people.
So you have to start there.
Yes. There has to be a self-awareness about who you are in the room.
And you either, I'm going to catch that guy or I'm going to make it. So it's funny you bring this up. Because where do I get the whole make your coach uncomfortable that you're not in the game?
Yeah.
Like,
you want to be good enough that he is feeling some kind of way that you're not playing.
Because if they're uncomfortable that you're not in the game, they'll look for situations.
They'll find a way to put you in the game.
Put you in the game.
100%.
Oh, hey, he looks like he needs a breather.
Or
the guy coming out is like, I'm good. I'm good.
We're
good. You just keep fresh.
Yeah.
Hey, playing for the long. So
you don't need 28 carries. We're going to keep you at 20.
So that's really, really hard.
Yes.
Because you have to condition yourself where you're cheering for somebody because the goal is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Or hopefully it's both. So or you don't have anybody to bitch and moan to.
Yeah. You're still trying to chase them down though.
Yeah. But you're not running. You're not like, hey man, I can't believe. Dude,
No, because you acknowledge that they're better already.
They let this dude. Sometimes that doesn't happen first, though.
No.
That's best case scenario.
Right. But that makes it much easier to not bitch and moan.
Listen, if we're being fine, you put this.
Let's do it.
First couple of carries, LP's going 3s against 3s. Right, he housed like 3 of the first 6,
and you're like, oh, he's going on 3. He's going against the.
And I remember Ed Stewart coming over to us. It was a couple of guys, and he's like, "Hey, man, you young bucks better get it in gear." Do you know what we thought though?
What?
Oh man,
he's going against 3s.
We could do that against the 3s.
Yeah,
shoot, I'd score too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's not. That's not always.
It's not immediate.
It's not always the first thing that happens, and it's not natural, normal behavior too.
No, especially when you're a highly competitive, high-achieving athlete. Because
then it goes to he may rip one off against Okie State, right? And
that's Oklahoma State.
No, it's shoot. That was unreal. I might not have made it look that easy, but I could do that.
I still would have scored.
Right.
I still would have scored. It looked a little different.
So that's the kind of stuff you start doing.
You start justifying it a little bit.
And then it's like, is this distracting me from me getting better? So that's like the next phase. And then you have to continue to progress like, all right, fine. I need to get to the point where they're uncomfortable or they feel like they owe me because of.
They have to find spots to get you the ball.
Right.
And get you in the game.
So that's what I always encourage guys
special
to
teams,
do.
whether it's
because how does that help? So how does that help me as a coach? Well, it helps me as a coach is because what do I always say? And I've said this since I started with Lamanji in 05. I need options. I don't want to have to be married to you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, literally
you want to
about
coach
that
your
time.
way.
It's like, never mind that.
You want to coach your way into having options.
Yeah. Like if you're not on your game today, I want to have players that like what it was like for me.
Well, you got the ugly end of that at Nebraska too, right?
Yeah, but one of the things that it did though is I'm always ready.
Yeah.
You're not going to. It's the only reason I eat and or train, right? What I tell you, I'd rather be caught with than without.
Yeah, stay ready.
But that's where it came from. Right?
But
like you're not going to catch me off guard anymore.
It's really, really hard if you know physically, you're just like, I'm not catching Lawrence.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to get into a mentality of still thinking like you are a 1, like Coach Rule's talking about, right? Where I think it's easier if you're a young guy, right? And you'll have more experience on this, so tell me if I'm wrong. But if you're a young guy, right? And I'm just going to we'll keep it in the family. Let's say Caleb, right? Caleb is chasing guys down right now, right? He's trying to. That's his goal. It's like, hey, I want to put myself in a position where I want to play, right? He's not a starter, right? We wouldn't put him in that group, but you look at him and you go, okay, Caleb's sitting there and he goes, okay, I may not be a starter, but I can be one of those guys sooner rather than later. It's easier to chase before
you have to pick one at a time and run them down.
Yeah, but it's easier if you're in that. I think for me, it would be easier if I'm in that spot where I'm young. I don't know what my ceiling is yet. I don't know that guys ahead of me are better than me.
How do you get to the point where you don't think like a 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
And if you're young, it's easy not to think like a 2 because you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I can do what that guy does.
But
you don't know
you have to have a certain temperament too, though.
Yeah.
You're right. So as I'm processing through it, it's harder than I make it seem.
Yeah, it's really hard. I think
it's really hard, and it's harder than Coach Rule makes it seem too, because
it's a simple versus easy thing here, right?
Yeah,
it's real simple. It's not easy
because people keep trying to cram certain players down. Oh man, this young guy's going to play early. Okay, he might,
maybe.
He's not I'll just use Carter Nelson because I just was having this conversation.
Yeah, people have brought him up a lot recently because I think somebody
because coaches do.
Yeah,
which it could be for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes players need to hear that. Sometimes people need to be encouraged. Sometimes it's
especially
because
they make a position change.
Right. Right. So, and I'm not saying that with Carter. I'm saying generally speaking, you never know. But it's what we always glob onto. Yeah. And then we wonder why sometimes we don't see guys. Oh, we heard about this guy all season. Oh, it's the media's fault for hyping him up.
We did that last year.
Stop trying to guess why they bring guys up. Just receive the information. Now, to get to the point, he doesn't have to be the next best boundary guy. He has to be the next best receiver.
Pass catcher. Yeah.
Because, and he may not be the most perfect example because he does have a few unique skill sets, but there are a couple of other boundary guys that could do that. So it's not just being about the 2 deep at that position. It's about being in the top 6 or 7
pass catchers.
Yeah. because that's what happens next.
You brought up tight end. Tight end's a really good spot, right?
Well, Fedoni, see, that's a really good example. If I get down to my 6th receiver.
Yeah. Would you rather have Fedoni?
Would I rather have Fedoni out there as a pass catcher and the next best tight end?
Yeah.
Or would I keep Fedoni where he is
and then bring in my
my 6th best wide receiver?
Because off the top of my head, I would go, okay, so I go Banks, Nair, Lloyd, Coleman. Let's say that's my top 4. If I get to my 5th guy and I'm like, do I want to put Barney in here? Do I want to put Carter Nelson in here? Do I want to put Bullock in here? I don't know, right? But I know I like Fedoni. But then the question doesn't become, do I like Fedoni more than Bullock? The question becomes, do I like Bullock more than Borkatrew?
Yeah. So, you want a real life example?
Yeah.
So at one point, Teddy Rizak and Christian Jones were starting at outside linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I was very uncomfortable not playing Nick England, right? Number 33, the guy everybody loves.
Yeah.
Right?
Really good ball player.
Coach Lamanji comes to me and he says, we need to play our best 11. Is he one of our best 11?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, he is, but he's our 1A at outside. The minute we could have an excuse,
you put him in.
We moved Teddy to safety and Nick to outside linebacker. Kept our best 11 on the field. But you had to go back and tell Teddy, hey, I know this isn't your net. So another conversation has to follow, right? You just don't, it's not easy.
No.
And one of the things I always liked about Teddy 2.5 was he swallowed that.
Adaptable.
Right? So if I'm Shavers now, and I haven't been cross-training for strong side, weak side, inside, or I have been cross-training for strong side, weak side, I'm probably doing one more than the other. Hopefully I'm not. But now you have to get comfortable now to, I'm not used to being on this side. I'm used to the field, or I'm used to the close side because when I was with this guy, this is what I played. So then there's that process. Then there's the moving up of the situational reps where now it's like, oh, shoot, I'm not as – if we ran 60 plays, they may have only looked at 12 of mine because I wasn't with this group, and they went through the first 47 and I wasn't even on film. Then you got to be able to handle that.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's different. You run 160 plays in a scrimmage. You only go through the first 43 or 50 or whatever the number is. You may not get looked at, but you still have to have the mentality that I'm the next guy up. I know he didn't get to me. I'm okay. I'll come back the next day and I'll do it again.
Well, that becomes like your internal motivator, right? Like I still have to get better there, right? You're like, they may not see me on tape today. I may not be with the group they're looking at today. I may not be in a spot, whatever I may not XYZ, right? But the question then becomes, can I still get better wherever I'm at?
Yeah.
And if you can, that's thinking like a 1, right? I can still get better. Let me get to the point. And, they do this with their nutrition stuff. We bring this up a lot where it's like, hey, you get low rewards for meeting your weight goals. You get low rewards for meeting your macros or whatever they are, right? Whatever the little victories, right? So you kind of have to almost gamify it in your own head, right? Okay, if I'm Shavers and I'm not on film today, I'm not on film on the scrimmage because I wasn't in the right group or whatever. So your next goal has to be, okay, let me be in the group that gets on film. Let me make sure they see me.
Yeah.
So what do I have to do to get to that point? And then you're in the group that's on film. So you go, okay, I'm in the group that's on film. That's a win. Gonna check that off my list. What do I got to do next to make my position coach uncomfortable not playing me? Okay, so that's the next one on the list, right? Then you can start chasing them down a little bit. And I think to me, this is how I ended up breaking it down, because I do think I think it's a really challenging thing to ask guys to do.
It's incredible.
You have to break it down into things you can control. Because at the end of the day, whether you get on the field or not is not under your control, really. It's somebody else's decision. Now, you can put them in a really difficult spot, but that's what you have to do, is you have to put them in that spot where they have to make the choice. But you have to be able to live with the choice. And so in order to get yourself mentally there, I think you have to give yourself little victories, little check marks along the way to keep locked in.
And it's a two-way street with communication, too, because – I have to be okay. And full disclosure, like this kept me up at night because Teddy could have easily said to me, well, can Nick play safety? or you can put him on. He could have said anything,
or something really reasonable, like, "Hey, I'm probably going to be this at the next level."
So I was just getting ready to get to that.
Like,
so that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Teddy, I know this isn't going to be where you play in college. Just help me out.
Yeah.
Like, that's hard. But do you know what helps me? Not only the support of the other adults, because they have the same unselfish vision. It's the culture. See, the culture supports.
And that's trust. He has to trust you implicitly that what you need.
He has to know that I have his best interest at heart, right?
So he has to trust you.
So that's what I'm telling you. Like, if LP's better, or whomever, Brooke, Tommy, whomever, right? The secondary was brutal.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Kareem Moss, like, that's hard.
Yeah.
So the culture has to be able to support what the mission is. Hey, man, be unselfish. Just do your 1 of 11. Whenever you're called upon, be the best version of yourself. Like, the more that is natural, and it's unnatural to complain and blame, and using the wrong
victim
pronouns.
mentality.
It supports the move. Right. So it's just like, and it wasn't easy. It was hard because you could have easily made it. I told you could have easily made the case when he moved. He was my best outside linebacker. Yeah. I moved the best player that was playing at a high level on that defense
to get your best 11 on the field.
Yeah.
And
I mean, just say that, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. But that never works. That never happens if there's not a level of trust.
Why does Bonner change positions?
Because he trusts what's happening.
What do you think they're telling him?
This is the best way for you to get on the field.
What do you think they're telling Borkacher?
This is the best way for you to get on the field.
Yep. Like, so the culture has to support that.
But they have to believe that you're telling them the truth.
Yeah,
like
but that's part of the culture too, though.
No,
because
100%.
Because that standard is set by your staff and your support staff and everybody that's involved. Which, I mean, full disclosure, that may be one of the reasons why you don't want parents there, because they're not ingrained in the culture yet,
and they don't understand.
And they don't understand that one day you may be here.
Why is Teddy playing safety instead of outside linebacker?
Right.
He's Division I outside linebacker, right? Like, you should probably play your Division I outside linebackers at outside linebacker.
That's a real specific example.
Yeah, but
it's so.
Yeah, it applies a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But that's why, like, Sam brought up, and we're not going to have a ton of time to get to this, but Sam brought up Colorado, and the difference between what appeals about Nebraska and the videos they put out.
By the way, that's how you can have a developmental program.
Yes.
Like, it all goes hand in hand.
But it all starts with the reason that the culture is what it is, the reason there's trust there, the reason there's buy-in is authenticity, right? The reason I don't like Deion isn't because he's loud and whatever. It's because I don't think he's authentic. I think he's full of it. Because he'll say one thing and then do another. Yeah. He'll say he cares about one thing and then his actions say something else. He says he's there for kids, and then he's embarrassing them and then putting it out on the internet for clout and clicks and whatever else, right?
Maybe that's his version of being authentic.
I mean, if his version of being authentic is being authentically a D-bag,
that's why I'm
fine.
Not a big your truth guy. You have to live your truth. I'm like,
you know what authenticity is?
I do believe in rights and wrongs.
What
right?
you say and what you do line up. That's being authentic, right? If Deion's saying one thing and doing another, that's not authentic. That might be who he really is.
Yeah,
but that's not authenticity. That's being full of it, right? The reason that it resonates with certain kids is because they're not in it yet. They don't understand what it's like yet. That's why you see just as many kids transferring out as you transferring in. Yeah, he's getting rid of some of them. I don't think he was trying to get rid of McClain, the 5-star. No, he wasn't.
Although it was hard for him to find a home.
Maybe, but
he might have been right about that one.
I don't know that maybe Deion wasn't helping out a lot either. Like that matters too in those situations. Like, what's Deion saying about him when coaches call, right? Like that matters too, right? Oh, he says he's soft. Well, is he soft? He doesn't want to fight his teammate. Like what does that mean, right? Coach Rule, the reason that resonates and the reason that he can say things and call them out and it goes out on the internet and everybody's cool with it, it's because he's authentic. He said that to their face before it ever made it out on the internet.
That's how you can get to the chasing 3 thing.
Yes, because when what you say in private is something they've already internalized, it doesn't matter if it happens out publicly.
Yeah, we'll roll that clip when we come back. See how you took it real time versus
We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Lots more to get to. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, also on KFOR in Lincoln. And it's now time for a new segment called Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Make sure you place your bets in person at Warhorse Sportsbook in Lincoln or Omaha. It is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Let's keep that money on the right side of the river. Although you're looking at the map, it's technically on the left side of the river. But you know what I mean, the correct side of the river at Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. And here's what I'm betting on, DB, is that long-term, the culture at Nebraska is going to beat out the culture at Colorado. I'm betting on that with everything I've got. I don't know what's going to happen on September 7th, although, as we talked with Sam, I could really use a W there.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is.
We talked about it real time. It's like, hey.
You've got to be able to rise to those situations, though, right? But long
especially now that the national narrative is being written.
Yes, because it comes across.
It comes across as dysfunctional and combative.
Yes.
Can that win?
And my long-term, my answer is no, right? Maybe that's me personally. I don't function well in toxically chaotic situations. I can keep my head above water when there's a lot going on.
Unfortunately, I've learned to thrive in those environments.
And I can function pretty well when there's a lot happening. But if people are being toxic while it's happening, I'm probably good. I'm just going to be done there, right? I'm not.
What do you like to say?
Yeah, deuces. I'm out. I'm good there, right?
In a similar vein, I'm betting on the fact that culture wins, right? Because I think ultimately it does.
Yeah.
And we'll have plenty of opportunities to put that to the test in multiple arenas, whether it's in your home, in the business setting. I mean, can you imagine how many people have been running businesses where they may have to take some outward concessions because it doesn't fit the culture?
100%.
Hey, this is not, I know they're doing this over, but boss, man, look at the revenue and they're doing this. And hey, won't win out in the long run.
It's really hard to say no to winning right now for what you think wins long term.
Yeah.
We saw this. I mean,
if they're different.
Yes. If they're not always.
Yeah.
They're not always. A lot of times they are. But we saw it with Coach Frost. He knew better. Right? I think that's fair. I don't know if he knew better in the moment.
He learned. I think he knew where he was going wrong real time.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think he knew better.
I
as he was sacrificing some things he cared about to do what he thought he needed to win right now.
Yep.
Which it will go down as one of the greatest ironies of all time. The guy that had the longest runway built in, maybe in recent college football history because of who he was to this state, felt the pressure to win right away. It's one of the great ironies of sports is that dude was going to get his time. And he got his time, right? He did. Probably more than he should have. At least that last little half.
I can't even really remember.
What do you mean?
The last year where people were surprised.
Oh, I just mean when he got fired midway with the Mickey Joseph. He probably should have been let go the season before, after the season before that.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Do you have to recruit to the culture, or does the culture evolve with new bodies?
Ooh, I think you have to recruit to the culture. Culture, I think, has to be the standard. And then you have to go, guys.
Because it doesn't have to change to the negative.
No, it doesn't. But I also don't think, I think it evolves a little bit, but there's going to be core things that matter are always your core things, right? Being competitive. That's a standard of Nebraska's culture. If you're not competitive, you're not going to last very long in Lincoln. Authenticity, I think, is a standard of their culture. If you're not authentic, you're not going to last very long in Lincoln. And accountability. If you're not accountable to yourself and to others, if you don't uphold the standard and help everybody else around you,
we've seen it cost a couple of guys' jobs, right?
Uphold the standard, you're not going to last very long in Lincoln. Those things aren't going to change. What it looks like will adapt as you get different players. And, one guy probably, it's just different leadership styles, right? One guy's going to hold people accountable differently than another guy does. I hold people accountable differently than you probably do. That's okay. It's still the same standard. It just looks a little different. So the the manifestation of the culture is going to look different as you recruit different guys, and that's fine. It's going to change a little bit as you bring in different coaches. It's going to look different under John Butler than it did under Evan Cooper, right? The quarterback
That's actually a really good example.
The quarterback room is going to look different under Glenn Thomas than it did under Marcus Satterfield. That doesn't mean Satterfield,
but the core,
but the core principles are the same.
It gets a little personality tweak.
Yeah, 100%, and that's okay. I think it has to, right? You have to be adaptable, but you also have to be convicted. And that those sound like they're opposite, but they're really not. You have to be willing to change the things that are okay to change and be unwavering in the things that you believe can't be. But in order to do that, you have to know the difference.
That's why I go back to just the mindset in the quarterback room.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I think that's important? Or I go back to something Coach Raiola said on Husker Sports Nightly about a month ago, where he was talking about the standard and their growth. And he said, that's why at the end of the day, I can keep feelings out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about feelings, because the standard and the culture is what it is. You're either you're meeting it or you're not. And why did I gravitate towards that? Because he made it sound so easy.
Well, so there's a key there though, right? He keeps feelings out of it when it's football time. But why is he able to do that? Because everybody knows you care about each other before that.
Yeah.
You can only keep feelings out of it if that's already established.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're human beings. You're never removing feelings from an equation, but you know how you limit their impact on the situation. Everybody knows that you care and love them before you get to the place. And then you can teach however you need to teach, right? But that's why Ryle was able to do that. It's because everybody in that, you say all the time, that offensive line room is the closest knit group on the team.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because, there were these times, again, just full disclosure, it looks great on the outside, but I'll tell you the conviction inside. I mean, we're like 6-7 games in, and I'm thinking in my head, how many scholarship offers am I costing Teddy Rizak?
Yeah. By moving him out of position.
Yeah.
Out of where his position will be.
Yeah.
Right? But
that's why I'm vibing with what you're saying.
The fact that you care matters.
And the fact that he knew I cared.
Yes.
Mattered.
Yes. Because if he doesn't think, if he's just like, oh man, DB's just trying to get a state title, he's just trying to win at West Side, he doesn't care what this looks like for me long term.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably
it has to be supported by my staff.
Yeah. And
it has to be supported by what's going on in his house.
By Teddy's parents. Yeah, I was just gonna say that, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're not on board for that,
oh yeah.
How does that go? Yeah. You want to know something you can bet on? You can bet on that not going well.
Good point.
Like that, if they're not on the same page and they're not vibing with you, and they know that you care, that gets relayed to the fact that
it probably comes across differently, right?
100%.
So that's interesting, because with position, so I'm looking at guys that they're looking for out of the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to a guy that everybody saw in Chasing 3, and they let the media in early, and so people were talking about who was working with the first unit and whose name came up at guard.
At guard.
At one point, we were saying, gosh, we're having these conversations about the offensive line, and we're not even bringing
Mazuka.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to the question about standards and culture and being adaptable, it was clear early on with what they were saying, and
that he hadn't quite got it yet.
Right.
He wasn't quite there yet. Physically, he's always been there.
Right. Yeah. He started in 2 Power 5 conferences, right?
Physically, he was there. He was fine.
So maybe that's kind of our answer as we're sorting through it, because they weren't ready to relent just because.
Yeah, because he was good. Well, it's really hard to
I gotta go.
Get a vibe on how
that one's interesting.
Guys will fit into culture. But if you see guys leave this program, it's going to be for one of 2 reasons. They understand that they probably aren't good enough to crack through the depth chart, and they want to go play somewhere else, and it's nothing personal on either side, like a Chief Borders. That's how it seemed there. Or you're going to see guys that aren't culture fits, and Nebraska's not wavering, so they want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the 2 reasons you're going to see guys leave Nebraska, and I doubt you'll see much of anything else. That's why a guy like Sierra Wright's super interesting, Because on the outside looking in, you'd look at that guy, he's like, is he an actor? Does he want to play? Like, what's going on here? And you'd be like, what's he doing here? That's a guy that, like, if he sticks around, you're like,
that was kind of a process, too. That wasn't as slam dunky as we maybe made.
No, but I also think they were doing their due
diligence.
Because
remember how quiet it was after his visit? We weren't even sure if he got there or not.
Yeah. But I think it's because they were trying to figure out, okay, does this guy fit?
Yeah.
And he was probably trying to figure out, do I fit there? That's Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. The best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Coming up next, we're going to preview Illinois with Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com. Wrapping up the show here on a Monday with Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln, and we're brought to you by our friends at Team Jack Foundation. Get to teamjackfoundation.org to donate, volunteer, see what events are going on, and see what projects they're working on to find better treatments and one day a cure for childhood brain cancer. That's teamjackfoundation.org. Joining DB and myself now is Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com. Robert, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. We were just reminiscing when we talked to you last year. You all but guaranteed Illinois wouldn't be good 2 years in a row, which we remember going back. So, yeah, I can tell you that much. And I just remember that it was just interesting because of the history. So let me ask you again, coming off a year ago, can we go the other way this year in Champaign?
I think right now I would say if last year was a thumbs down, this is a push.
Okay.
Push is probably the best way to frame it. I mean, look, last year, I think I even said it. Like, Illinois led NCAA football in 22 in interceptions with 24.
Yeah.
And we talked about last year, like, that never holds. You know?
That wasn't repeatable.
Yeah, you have a great secondary, and 3 of those guys get drafted in the first 3 rounds. You just know you're not going to have 24 interceptions again. And Illinois ended up with 7. So you go from 24, and they even had less fumble recovery. So you go from all these turnovers, flipping drives and changing games to 7 interceptions. It's just going to change a whole season. So, I think that should rebound. It's not going to go from a lot of turnover happiness to none, but yeah, it's still, it's still not back to a full roster recruited by the head coach, ready to roll deep at every position. It's just not there yet.
Robert, with some of the places that people are returning, let's take quarterback, for instance, with Luke Altmaier.
Yeah.
What are you expecting from him? Because he's a tough guy for me to peg in this Big Ten quarterback landscape.
Yeah, I think the drawback is he loses his 2 main receivers in Casey Washington and Isaiah Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Casey was drafted by the Cardinals. Isaiah Williams is playing really well with the Lions.
He's off to a good start.
Yep. And so, if you look at that, like, oh, those 2 guys were really good. And then you look at the next season, it's just going to be a fit before, even if you have a quarterback returning, he's going to find that level of comfort with some of his new receivers. Now he does have Pat Bryant back, who was, I think he'll be drafted next year. I think he's maybe the top NFL prospect on this team. So you still got a receiver you can really trust and a quarterback you can trust. Now it's just about putting pieces around that. They went out and got Zachary Franklin from Ole Miss as a transfer at receiver, hoping he can, his final season here, you can be a plug and play. And then you're just hoping some of the younger guys step forward.
How about I always talk about Coach Bielema going all the way back to Wisconsin. We covered it. We were in Indy. We watched what was going on and that whole gap scheme. And it's a tough run concept to defend when they're operating it at a high level. Can Illinois get back to being consistent running the football to give kind of Coach Bielema that dimension that he likes?
I mean, I think so. Caden Fagan is a sophomore. He's really good. He's really big. He's over 250. But he was a 4-star recruit, and he had Notre Dame, Michigan. He had all the offers. So he's going to be the centerpiece of that. I mean, that's what Bielema wants to do. But it's funny. I had an opinion as an Illinois fan for years, and Bielema was at Wisconsin. I had this opinion of how Bielema went about football, and like even when he went to Arkansas, it was, oh, is that going to work? Is that ground and pound and play good defense and just run the ball and only pass when you need to kind of thing? And it's interesting after 3 years of observing him here that he's much more of a, I don't know, like play smart football guy, like the ball because we were throwing too many interceptions and those interceptions killed us. And so I just turned to the run because I hate mistakes beyond anything else. And special teams mistakes are more deadly to a struggling football team than anything else. So we're just going to be the team that doesn't do that. I guess I had never seen that his brand of football, even the run game and defense, is a very field position. Mistakes can kill you. We are going to do everything we can to set up the team and set our opponents in 85-yard fields and do everything we can to do that, even if that includes being very risk averse and never throwing the ball when we're inside our own 15, even if that means we have to punt. So it's been a very fascinating look at how I used to view his teams and how I now view his teams of like, oh, that's why he's doing this. He's not as married to the run. He just hates mistakes so much that he won't pass the ball if he doesn't trust.
How much Valentine does Upside have? How much upside does a guy like Khalil Valentine have?
Pretty good. Like that's the hope, right? That you have a couple 4-star running backs,
and he can run.
Really
He's a 10-8 guy. Yeah.
He had, he went on an official to Oregon and other places. Like, that's the hope. It's just, again, I don't want to hammer too hard on the risk averse thing, but like if he were to fumble once, he's going to sit for 4 games. Like this is a coach that values turnovers more than any Illini coach I've observed. And so, we just don't know. You see Valentine on the practice field, and obviously he's, you guys know that. There's always that skilled, athletic guy at tailback, like, wow, he's so quick, and, so quick in and out of his dart, and this and that. But it's kind of funny how my brain has changed over the last few years of like, well, we'll have to see, because one bobble of one handoff and he's going to sit for 3 weeks. So we'll see how he does. I think Bielema has shown to bring along younger guys pretty slowly, so we'll have to see what happens there. He trusted big and early last year, and suddenly he was out there and starting. So we'll see.
We're talking with Robert Rosenthal. He's he runs the IlliniBoard.com. It's kind of funny because I don't want to minimize the point you made, but a lot of what I heard there was Iowa football guy wants to do Iowa football things.
Basically, yes.
I mean, I know he didn't play under Ferentz, but he coached them a little bit. Like there's a lot of similarities from what you just said and what we've seen Iowa do at a really high level for a long time.
Yeah, and really, it's interesting how much of it is K-State. Like I would say that Bielema references Bill Snyder as much as he references, hey, I learned this from Barry Alvarez, or hey, I learned this from Hayden Fry or whatever. But that's all the same kind of concept, right? Like those 3 schools were at one point, Iowa in the 70s or Wisconsin in the 80s or K-State leading up to Snyder. They were all bad at football and then just kind of found a way to do a program to rebuild it and then just stuck to their guns, on an excessive level to make that continue to happen. And I really do think that's what he's attempting to do here, is building that same kind of thing. And, there might be more passing to it. It might not just be, K-State threw the ball. It might not just be like, well, it's just run game and defense, and that's how you're going to win in the Big Ten. But there is a very strong commitment to, we need to have a thing, and we need to stick to it, and we need to not change from it, and we need to be consistent.
How good can be or are experienced guys like J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley, right? I mean, those guys are going to probably book in at tackle. Like, it starts up front. How about their development there?
I think J.C. Davis is probably going to be their top transfer in a long time.
Oh, so better than more impact than Franklin, huh?
I think so. Just because, well, the fact that that you lost both tackles, and you just don't have any young tackles who are ready yet. So they basically had to go portal to get their tackles this year.
Yeah.
We'll see with Priestley. Looks pretty good in practice, but you never know until it's the Michigan game and he's on play 74 and see how he's hanging up there. But it's J.C. Davis having a left tackle, having somebody, if Altmaier's going to continue to do what he's done, they had to go find a left tackle, and I think they found a really good one. I think they'll be picked next year, and he just built it up slowly at JUCO and then was great at New Mexico and has that COVID year and using it here. So that's probably their biggest find. Franklin, there's still the question marks because your listeners probably don't know. He was at UTSA, which under Barry Lunney, who's the Illinois offensive coordinator now. So that's they're reuniting here in Champaign. But he picked Ole Miss over Illinois last year. Went to Ole Miss, only played 4 games, shut it down, just didn't find a way into their offense. So there's still those question marks of like, okay, if he couldn't find the field at Ole Miss, is he going to be ready for Big Ten football, or was that just too big of a jump forward for him? So there's still those question marks there.
It was incredible because quietly UTSA had one of the best outside wide receiver tandems his last year. They were incredible.
Exactly. And that's the thing I always tell people about college football is like, when you hang out at practice, you start to realize that what the coaches know what they're talking about of like, hey, this guy is finding it right now. The light bulb's coming on. We have all seen, you get closer to it and you see.
It's not just coach speak, right?
Exactly. 100%. It's not just the coaches. It's like, no, something clicked with him and this coordinator and they just get each other. And it just made sense. And he went from dropping 3 passes a game and having 2 receptions to like all of a sudden 9 receptions a game because it's just working and it's clicking and it's going. And so that's the thing they're all trying to chase, right? That magic of like, okay, we got the perfect fit here of play calls and understanding between receiver and quarterback, and now it's going to work. When last year at Ole Miss, it just nothing materialized.
That's Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com. Robert, we appreciate it as always. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. Thanks, Robert.
Sounds good. I'll see you guys in Lincoln on a Friday night.
Yes, sir. We will be back tomorrow with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln.